this voice is not Penelope Cruz or Cameron Diaz's character. It's an actress by the name of Laura Frazier, and she is, I believe, awakening him into the future. But that's just an interpretation. That's the one closest to my heart, really. But people didn't really want to believe that that was a new voice, and I talked to Alejandro about it when we were in Spain, and he said, the same thing happened to him. People wanted to believe it was one of the two women, but to Alejandro and in my kind of interpretation of the movie, that's a nurse in the future, opening the door to another chance. There are a couple different interpretations. One that was really popular was that the movie occurs in the coma that took place after the accident, and a lot of people clung to that one. And to them I say, cling. It's good. Another one, of course, is the one that's spurred by the sticker that's on the Mustang and the voice of Sophia at the beginning. That kind of points to the fact that the whole thing could be a dream. That's the interpretation that the movie muscled in and brought to the table. And then there's my secret one, which I think I should reveal right now, that the whole movie could be Jason Lee's novel written about his friend who got all the good girls until a crucial event that allowed his friend to realize his own mortality. Because Jason's a little bit of a hero with darkness and lightness, and he could easily have made himself the hero of his own book about David Ames. But those are just some suggestions. There's probably a few others. I've read some great stuff on Greg Mariotti's website, The Uncool. It's been very entertaining, and I've always loved how people got so invested in the movie. Billy Wilder once said that his greatest dream was that he could make a movie that people would want to talk about for 15 minutes afterwards. And when I was interviewing him for our book, I said, just 15 minutes? He said, 15 minutes is the minimum. But that was his goal, and I think that was an honorable goal that I had in my mind when we made Vanilla Sky, that this could be a movie that people could talk about later, and as we're talking about it now. The song, I have to tell you, that we're hearing by Paul McCartney was a gift. Paul was on our minds a lot in the making of the movie, and Danny Bramson, who does the music, we do the music together on the movies, contacted him and asked him if he'd want to come to the editing room and see some footage and think about participating with some of his music. So one day Paul McCartney actually showed up in our editing room, and that in itself was a seismic situation. But he came and he saw about 40 minutes of the movie and was affected by it, and we went back to his studio where he was recording Driving Rain, and he played us some songs, and they sounded great, and they sounded like they'd work, and I just sort of jumped in and said, you've seen about 40 minutes of the movie. There's a theme about, cherishing what's real in our lives and cherishing love and, embracing the sweet and sour of life. And if anything comes to you, if you want to write a new song, like a folk song, a ballad, because the movie always did feel a little bit like a folk song to me, go right ahead. And he kind of looked at me like, I'm a little busy, and this is the album that I'm recording right now. But he was totally gracious and wonderful. And then that was on a Tuesday. On a Saturday, Danny Bramson's cell phone rang, and it was Paul McCartney. And he said, get to know me, man, because if you ask me for something, I might just come through for you. I've written a new song, a folk song, called Vanilla Sky. And if you don't like it, I'll just change the words to Manila Envelope. And we raced across town to the studio and saw him again, and he played us the song. And it felt like the perfect way to kind of come back down to earth after we've tumbled through this story. And that became the end title. You hear a little bit of it in the beginning when David Ames is waking up in his apartment, but it was Paul McCartney who, I think, the DNA of the movie really is in him, and he just kind of perfectly hit the right note for the end of the movie. And as we're now watching the many songs that kind of rattle around the psyche of Vanilla Sky, it's kind of perfect that it ends with this kind of grace note from Paul McCartney, who says in the song the word sweet and sour. And it really brings the movie together for me when it's over. I want to thank a few people for being involved in this labor of love. Scott Martin and Andy Fisher from Vinyl Films. Scott, thank you for being on-set DJ and producer. Paula Wagner, Tom Cruise, Jonathan Sanger, the cast and crew, Jeff Wexler, Don Sofel, who did the great sound, Anna Maria Quintana, Diane Dreyer, Don Lee, Woody, Herb, Dilly Gent from Radiohead, Dia Fernandez, Michael Dovin, David McGiffert, Gail Levin, Michelle Burke, Betsy Hyman, Ellen Freund, Mike Thomas, Graydon Carter for letting us use Vanity Fair, John Arena, Michael Mann and the Ali crew that mixed next to us, Martin Scorsese for loaning us Cameron Diaz, and you gotta say Alejandro Amenabar and Mateo Gil. Thank you very much for loaning us your folk song and your fable and your great words and story. And the great Nancy Wilson, who thinks I say great too much, thank you for your score. Bye.